Dr. Elena Vasquez walked into the Great Hall of the Galactic Archaeological Council, with her heart beating fast. The massive room stretched out before her like a crystal cave, its walls made of some alien material that seemed to glow with its own light. Hundreds of beings from across the galaxy sat in floating chairs, watching her with eyes that looked nothing like human eyes. Elena carried a small metal case in her hands. Inside was humanity's greatest discovery, found deep underground on a dead human colony world. She had spent 3 years studying it, and today she would finally show it to the most important scientists in the galaxy. The council leader, a tall creature made of living crystal called Zixthera, spoke in a voice that sounded like wind chimes. "Dr. Vasquez, you may present your findings." Elena set the case on the speaking platform and opened it carefully. Inside, resting on soft padding, was a dark crystal object about the size of her fist. It looked old and beaten up, with scratches and burn marks across its surface. To most people, it looked like a piece of broken junk. This artifact was found beneath the ruins of New Geneva Colony, Elena began, trying to keep her voice steady. Carbon dating shows it's over 50,000 years old. That makes it older than any known human settlement in space. A ripple of soft laughter came from the audience. The Mokari delegate, a creature that looked like a giant octopus with too many tentacles, waved several arms in what Elena knew was their version of dismissive humor. 50,000 years, the Mokari said in bubbling tones. Humans have only been in space for 800 years. Perhaps your dating methods need work. More laughter echoed through the hall. Elena felt her cheeks burn red, but she kept going. The quantum signatures are unlike anything we've seen before, she said, pulling up holographic displays that showed complex energy patterns. When exposed to certain stellar radiations, it shows organized data streams. I believe this proves humans had advanced technology much earlier than we thought. Zixthera's crystal body flashed with colors that Elena recognized as amusement. Dr. Vasquez, humans are young. Your species discovered fire only yesterday in galactic terms. The idea that you once possessed advanced technology is quite entertaining. The Thesek representative, a being that looked like a living swarm of insects that somehow held a humanoid shape, buzzed in agreement. Human archaeological claims often exceed reality. This appears to be a primitive energy storage device. Nothing more. Elena looked down at the artifact. For just a moment she could swear she saw it pulse with a faint inner light. But when she looked directly at it, it appeared dark and lifeless again. The energy readings suggest something far more complex than a simple battery, Elena insisted. The quantum matrices show patterns that shouldn't be possible with current human technology, let alone ancient human technology. Current human technology? The Mokari delegate's tentacles writhed with what Elena knew was their version of laughter. Humans still use chemical rockets for most transport. Your computers are barely more advanced than counting stones. The idea that ancient humans surpassed modern human achievement is creative. Elena felt anger rising in her chest. Just because we're newer to space doesn't mean we lack the ability to create advanced technology. This artifact shows clear signs of quantum engineering at a level that rivals anything produced by the major galactic powers. The hall fell silent for a moment. Then Zixthera's crystalline form began to glow brighter, a sign Elena recognized as barely controlled amusement. Dr. Vasquez, the council leader said slowly, your enthusiasm for your species' potential is charming, but science requires evidence, not wishful thinking. What you have shown us appears to be debris from some forgotten human experiment, perhaps a failed attempt to copy superior alien technology. The words hit Elena like a physical blow. Around the hall, delegates from dozens of species nodded in agreement. The Zephyrians, beings of pure energy contained in crystal shells, flickered in patterns that Elena knew meant they found humans amusing, in the way adults found children's drawings cute. Elena tried one more time. The quantum resonance patterns show clear signs of... Dr. Vasquez, Zixthera interrupted, the council has heard enough. While we appreciate humanity's desire to contribute to galactic archaeology, this item belongs in a museum of primitive cultures, not in serious scientific study. The Mokari delegate added, perhaps humans should focus on understanding their own recent history before making claims about ancient civilizations. Elena looked around the hall, seeing dismissal and condescending smiles on every alien face. These beings had ruled the galaxy for millions of years. They had built cities that spanned entire star systems and created technologies that seemed like magic to human eyes. To them, humanity was barely more advanced than cavemen who had somehow learned to build spaceships. "Very well," Elena said quietly, closing the case around the artifact. "I request that the artifact be assigned to Research Station Hermes for further study." "Granted," Zixthera said with a wave of one crystalline hand. "Though we suggest you not waste too much time on it. Humanity has many real archaeological sites that deserve proper attention." As Elena walked out of the Great Hall, she could hear the delegates already moving on to other business. Behind her, voices discussed the fascinating ruins found on Zephyrian worlds and the amazing biotechnology discovered in ancient Mokari sites. No one mentioned humans again. In the corridor outside, Elena stopped and opened the case once more. The artifact sat in its padding, looking for all the world like a piece of worthless junk. But as she stared at it, she could swear she felt something. A warmth that seemed to pulse in time with her heartbeat. A sense that something vast and patient was waiting inside the dark crystal. "They think you're nothing," she whispered to the artifact. "They think we're nothing." For just a moment, the artifact seemed to pulse with a soft blue light. Elena blinked and it was dark again. She closed the case and walked toward the transport bay. Research Station Hermes was a small facility on the edge of nowhere, the kind of place the council sent projects they wanted to forget about. It wasn't the assignment Elena had hoped for, but it would give her time to study the artifact properly. As her transport lifted off from the council world, Elena looked back at the gleaming city below. The towers stretched up toward the stars, built from technologies that humans could barely understand. The beings who lived there saw humanity as children playing with toys they didn't understand. But Elena had felt something in that artifact. Something that suggested the galaxy's most powerful species might not know everything about the universe. Something that hinted at secrets buried deeper than anyone imagined. The artifact lay in its case beside her as the transport jumped to hyperspace, carrying them both toward a small research station where nobody would bother them. Elena didn't know it yet, but she was about to uncover a truth that would shake the foundations of galactic civilization. In the case, the artifact pulsed once more with its hidden light, responding to something far away in the dark between the stars. Something ancient was stirring, and the artifact Elena carried was the key to humanity's greatest secret. 3 months after the council meeting, Elena sat in her small lab on Research Station Hermes, staring at readings that made no sense. The artifact lay on her workbench, connected to every scanner the station possessed. The numbers on her screens told an impossible story. The station's communication array suddenly came alive with urgent signals. Elena looked up from her work as Commander Torres burst into her lab, his face pale with worry. "Elena, you need to see this," he said, activating the main display screen. Emergency broadcast from the Galactic Defense Network. The screen filled with the image of Admiral Kextar, a Zephyrian military leader whose crystal form was flickering with stress patterns Elena had never seen before. Behind him, star charts showed red warning zones spreading across multiple sectors. "All galactic forces are to assume maximum alert status," the Admiral announced. "Long-range sensors have detected massive energy signatures emerging from the void sector. Early reports suggest the return of an ancient threat we hoped never to see again." Elena felt her blood turn cold. The void sector was the empty region at the galaxy's edge where no stars shone and no life existed. Nothing had ever come from there except darkness. "The Devourers have awakened," Admiral Kextar continued. "All civilian populations in outer rim sectors are advised to evacuate immediately. Military forces are mobilizing for what may be the greatest threat our galaxy has ever faced." The transmission ended, leaving Elena and Commander Torres staring at a screen full of red warning indicators. Elena had heard stories about the Devourers in school, ancient legends about machines that ate stars and turned planets into metal. Most people thought they were myths. "How bad is it?" Elena asked, though she could guess from Torres's expression. "Bad enough that every species in the galaxy is putting aside their differences," Torres replied. "The Zephyrians are sharing military technology with the Mokari. The Thesek have opened their private communication networks to everyone. That's never happened before." Over the following days, reports flooded in from across the galaxy. The Devourers weren't just stories. They were real, and they were massive beyond imagination. Ships the size of moons emerged from dark space, their hulls made of some black material that seemed to absorb light itself. They moved with purpose, sweeping through star systems and breaking them apart like a child destroying toys. Elena watched the reports with growing horror. The Devourers didn't just destroy civilizations, they absorbed them. Planets were stripped down to their cores and rebuilt into more Devourer ships. Space stations were torn apart and their materials processed into new weapons. Even the energy from dying stars was somehow captured and stored. But what terrified Elena most was how quickly they learned. The first Zephyrian battle group that encountered them used standard crystal lance weapons. The Devourers adapted their shields to absorb crystal energy within hours. When the Mokari sent bioships that could heal damage and change shape, the Devourers created weapons that turned the ship's own healing abilities against them. They're not just machines, Elena said to Torres as they watched footage of a Devourer ship effortlessly destroying a Thesek swarm fleet. They're learning machines. Every tactic we use they find a counter for. The artifact on her workbench pulsed with blue light, stronger than Elena had ever seen before. She'd been so focused on the news that she almost missed it. Did you see that? She asked Torres. See what? Elena looked at the artifact again. It appeared dark and lifeless, just as it always did when other people were watching. But the moment Torres looked away, it pulsed again. Nothing, Elena said. Just thought I saw something. As the weeks passed, the news grew worse. The combined Galactic Fleet, the largest military force ever assembled, met the Devourers at the Kepler Nebula. The battle lasted 3 days and ended in complete defeat. Ships that had never been damaged in 1,000 years of warfare were torn apart like paper. Weapons that could crack planets barely scratched Devourer armor. Elena spent her nights studying the artifact, trying to understand the patterns she was seeing. The quantum signatures were becoming clearer, and they seemed to respond to news about the Devourers. Every time a report came in about Devourer activity, the artifact's energy reading spiked. One night, working alone in her lab while the rest of the station slept, Elena made a breakthrough. She had been running the artifact through a spectrum analysis when strange symbols appeared on its surface. They glowed faintly for just a few seconds before fading away. Elena quickly adjusted her scanners and ran the test again. This time she was ready with recording equipment. The symbols appeared again, and she managed to capture them before they vanished. The symbols looked like no human writing she had ever seen, but somehow she felt like she almost understood them. They reminded her of star charts, but showing constellations that didn't exist in any current galactic map. Elena spent hours staring at the symbols, trying to decode their meaning. As she worked, more reports came in from the front lines. The Devourers had broken through the second defensive line. They were heading toward the galactic core, and nothing seemed able to stop them. That's when Elena noticed something that made her heart race. One of the symbols looked exactly like the stellar formation where the Devourers had first appeared. Another matched the pattern of a star cluster that had been destroyed just days earlier. The artifact wasn't just responding to Devourer activity. It was tracking them. Elena ran to her computer and started comparing the symbols to star charts. What she found made her hands shake with excitement and terror. The symbols showed the locations of Devourer attacks, but they also showed something else. They showed the path the Devourers were following and their final destination, the galaxy's core, the heart of galactic civilization, where billions of beings lived on the capital worlds of every major species. But that wasn't the most frightening discovery. As Elena studied the symbols more carefully, she realized they weren't just a tracking system. They were coordinates, pointing to specific locations across the galaxy. And one set of coordinates was very close to her current position. Elena looked at the artifact with new understanding. This wasn't just some ancient human relic. It was a key, and it was trying to show her something important. Something that might be humanity's only chance to survive what was coming. She activated her long-range communication system and sent an urgent message to Earth, requesting access to deep archaeological records. If the artifact was trying to lead her somewhere, she needed to know where. And she needed to know what she might find when she got there. Outside her lab window, the stars seemed dimmer than usual. Elena didn't know if it was her imagination, or if the Devourers had already begun consuming the light from distant suns. Either way, she knew she was running out of time. The artifact pulsed again, brighter than ever, and Elena could swear she heard something like a whisper in the back of her mind. Ancient words in a language she didn't recognize but somehow understood. Find us. the whisper seemed to say, before it's too late. Elena's hands trembled as she stared at the data flowing across her screens. 3 weeks of intensive research had revealed the impossible truth about the artifact and about humanity itself. The archaeological records from Earth painted a picture that changed everything she thought she knew about human history. The coordinates from the artifact led to a dead star system called Sanctuary, located in what was now considered unexplored space. But according to the ancient records Elena had uncovered, humans had once lived there. Not just lived there, they had built something enormous. This can't be right, Elena whispered to herself as she cross-referenced the data for the 100th time. The records were fragments, pieces of information that had been dismissed as mythology for centuries. Stories of humans who had ruled among the stars before the current galactic powers even existed. The artifact pulsed on her workbench, its blue light now constant and bright. Elena had stopped trying to hide its glow from others. The approaching devourer threat had made secrecy seem pointless. A knock on her lab door interrupted her thoughts. Commander Torres entered, followed by a man Elena didn't recognize. The stranger was tall and thin, with the pale complexion of someone who spent too much time in deep space. His eyes had the intense focus of an engineer who saw problems others missed. "Elena," Torres said, "I'd like you to meet Marcus Chen. He's had some interesting theories about human technology." Marcus stepped forward, his gaze immediately drawn to the glowing artifact. "So this is the relic that's been causing so much excitement. May I?" Elena nodded, watching as Marcus approached the workbench. The moment he came within arm's reach of the artifact, it flared brighter, and symbols began appearing on its surface. "Fascinating," Marcus said softly. "It's responding to my presence as well. That suggests a biological component to its activation system." "You're human," Elena said. "It only responds to humans. I've tested that theory with other species." Marcus smiled grimly. "I've been studying fragments like this for years. Most of the scientific community thinks I'm crazy. They believe humans are a young species that stumbled into space through luck and borrowed technology. But you don't think so." "I know we're not." Marcus pulled out a small datapad and showed Elena images of archaeological sites across human space. "These ruins are scattered across dozens of worlds. They're old, Elena, older than current galactic civilization, and they all show the same thing: advanced human technology that shouldn't have existed." Elena felt her pulse quicken. "How advanced?" "Advanced enough to build weapons that could fight the devourers," Marcus said quietly. "I think our ancestors encountered them before, and I think they won." Before Elena could respond, the station's emergency alarms began blaring. The main communication screen activated automatically, showing Admiral Kekstar's crystal form flickering with patterns Elena now recognized as panic. "All remaining forces are to fall back to the core sectors immediately," the Admiral announced. "The Devourers have broken through our final defensive lines. Estimated time to reach the galactic capital is 72 hours. The transmission ended, leaving them in stunned silence. Elena looked at Marcus, then at the artifact, which was now pulsing so brightly it lit up the entire lab. "We're out of time," Marcus said. "If we're going to investigate these coordinates, we need to leave now." Elena nodded, her scientific curiosity overriding her fear. "Torres, can you arrange transport to the sanctuary system?" Torres looked skeptical. "Hell no, that's unexplored space. We don't even know if it's safe." "Nowhere is safe anymore," Elena replied, carefully placing the artifact in its protective case. "At least this might give us answers." The journey to Sanctuary took 18 hours through hyperspace. Elena and Marcus spent the time sharing their research, piecing together fragments of humanity's lost history. The picture that emerged was staggering. 50,000 years ago, humans had been the dominant power in the galaxy. They had built cities that spanned star systems and wielded technology that bent the laws of physics. But something had happened to them. The records suggested they had faced a terrible enemy and paid a horrible price to defeat it. The Devourers, Marcus said as their ship dropped out of hyperspace near the dead star that had once been Sanctuary's sun. "Our ancestors fought them before and won, but the victory cost them everything. The star system was a graveyard. Dead planets orbited a burnt-out stellar core, their surfaces scarred by ancient battles. But deep-range sensors detected something impossible: a massive artificial structure hidden inside the dead star itself. How is that possible? Elena asked as their ship's computer analyzed the readings. Nothing can survive inside a stellar core. Nothing using current technology, Marcus corrected. But if the ancients could build this, they were working with physics we don't understand. Their ship's AI guided them through a complex approach pattern that seemed to be embedded in the artifact's quantum signature. As they drew closer to the dead star, Elena saw that its surface wasn't natural anymore. Massive geometric patterns covered what had once been burning plasma, creating a shell around something vast hidden within. It's a facility, Marcus breathed, as more details became clear. They built a research facility inside a star. The artifact in Elena's case began vibrating, its light now so bright she could see it through the metal. Suddenly, a section of the stellar shell opened, revealing a passage that led into the star's core. "This is insane," Elena said, but she was already programming their ship to follow the passage. "We're flying into a dead star based on signals from a 50,000-year-old artifact. Sometimes insane is the only option left," Marcus replied. The passage led them through layers of technology that boggled the mind. The ship's sensors detected materials that shouldn't exist, and energy patterns that violated known physics. After what felt like hours but was probably only minutes, they emerged into a vast hollow space at the star's heart. The facility that awaited them was beyond anything Elena had imagined. Corridors stretched for kilometers in every direction, their walls lined with equipment that hummed with barely contained power. The architecture was clearly human, but it was human engineering elevated to an almost godlike level. As they docked their ship and stepped into the facility, Elena felt the weight of 50,000 years of history pressing down on her. This place had been built by humans, but by humans who had achieved things the current galaxy thought impossible. The artifact in her hands now blazed with light, and symbols appeared on its surface faster than she could read them. But somehow Elena found she could understand their meaning. They were instructions pointing the way to the facility's heart. "Marcus," she said softly, "I think we're about to discover what our ancestors built to fight the Devourers." "And I think," Marcus replied, staring at the impossible technology around them, "we're about to learn why the galaxy's most advanced species thought humans were primitive. They had found humanity's greatest secret. Now they had to discover if it was powerful enough to save the galaxy from an enemy that had returned to finish what it started 50,000 years ago." The facility waited in silence around them, its ancient system slowly awakening to the presence of humans for the first time in millennia. Deep in its core, something vast and patient began to stir, responding to the artifact Elena carried and the desperate need that had brought them here. The stars were falling silent as the Devourers consumed them. But here in the heart of a dead sun, humanity's true legacy was about to be revealed. Elena and Marcus walked deeper into the ancient facility, their footsteps echoing through corridors that had been silent for 50,000 years. The artifact in Elena's hands blazed like a small star, lighting their way through passages lined with technology that made the galaxy's most advanced civilizations look primitive. "The power readings are off the charts," Marcus said, checking his scanner with disbelief. "This facility is drawing energy directly from quantum vacuum. That's supposed to be impossible." Elena barely heard him. She was transfixed by the symbols that kept appearing on the walls as they passed, glowing briefly before fading away. Each symbol told part of a story, the story of humanity's lost golden age and the terrible price they had paid to save the galaxy. They reached a vast central chamber, where the ceiling stretched so high it disappeared into darkness. At the center stood a crystalline structure that looked like a tree made of pure light. As they approached, the artifact in Elena's hands suddenly flew from her grasp, floating toward the crystal tree and settling into a socket at its base. The entire chamber erupted with light. Holographic displays filled the air around them, showing star maps, technical specifications, and something that made Elena's heart stop. Images of the Devourers from 50,000 years ago. "My God," Marcus whispered. They documented everything. The holograms showed the ancient war in terrible detail. The Devourers had been even more powerful in the past, their ships the size of planets, their hunger seemingly infinite. They had consumed entire sectors of the galaxy, turning civilizations into raw materials for their endless expansion. But humanity had fought back. The holograms showed human ships unlike anything in the modern galaxy. vessels that seemed to bend space around them, weapons that could reach across star systems, technology that treated the laws of physics as suggestions rather than absolute rules. How did we lose all of this? Elena asked, staring at images of human cities that spanned entire solar systems. The answer came in the final holograms. The war against the Devourers had lasted for centuries, and humanity had been losing. The machines adapted to every weapon, countered every strategy, turned humanity's own technology against them. In desperation, the ancient humans had built something unprecedented, a weapon that worked not by destroying the Devourers, but by trapping them in their own logic. The resonance engine, Marcus read from the technical displays. It doesn't fight the Devourers' adaptation ability. It forces them to adapt to something that can't be adapted to. Elena studied the specifications with growing amazement and horror. The weapon was brilliant and terrible. It created what the ancient humans called a paradox cascade, forcing the Devourers to adapt to an adaptation that adapted to their adaptation, creating an infinite loop that would freeze them in quantum stasis. But using the weapon had required a sacrifice. Every human involved in its operation had to link their mind directly to the quantum field that governed reality itself. The mental strain was so enormous that it would leave them changed forever, no longer quite human. That's why our ancestors seemed to disappear, Elena realized. They didn't die in the war. They transformed into something else. Something that could operate this technology but could no longer live as normal humans. The chamber suddenly filled with a new presence. Elena felt it before she saw it. A vast intelligence awakening in the depths of the facility. The crystal tree began to pulse with deeper light, and a voice spoke directly into their minds. "Descendants," the voice said. "Ancient beyond measure, but unmistakably human. You have returned at the time of greatest need." Elena looked around but saw no one. "Who are you?" "I am what remains of Commander Sarah Chen, last keeper of the resonance engine. My body has been gone for 49,000 years, but my consciousness was preserved within the quantum matrix to guard this place." Marcus stared at the crystal tree with new understanding. "You're part of the weapon. You became part of it to keep it safe." "We all did," Sarah's voice replied. "Every human who operated the engine became one with it. We gave up our physical existence to create something that could protect the galaxy from the Devourer's return." "Their return?" Elena felt ice in her veins. "You knew they would come back?" "We wounded them, not destroyed them. They retreated to the void between galaxies to heal and adapt. We knew they would return eventually, and we prepared for that day." The holograms around them shifted, showing the facility's true purpose. It wasn't just a weapon. It was a complete defense system, designed to be operated by humans whose neural patterns matched the quantum template of their ancestors. "But why humans?" Marcus asked. "Why can only we operate this technology?" "Because you are the descendants of those who built it," Sarah explained. "The quantum patterns that allowed us to interface with reality itself are encoded in your DNA. Every human carries the potential to become something more, to transcend the limitations of physical existence and work directly with the fundamental forces of the universe." Elena felt the truth of those words resonating in her bones. She had always felt different, had always been able to understand complex patterns that others missed. Now she understood why. She was the descendant of beings who had rewritten the rules of existence itself. "The Devourers are less than 40 hours from the galactic core," Marcus said urgently. "Can the engine stop them?" "Yes," Sarah replied, "but it requires an operator willing to make the same sacrifice we made. Someone who will link their consciousness to the quantum field and become part of the engine forever." Elena looked at the crystal tree, understanding flooding through her. The artifact had led her here not just to find a weapon, but to find her destiny. She was meant to take Sarah's place, to become the new guardian of humanity's greatest secret. "I'll do it," Elena said without hesitation. "Elena, no," Marcus protested. "There has to be another way." "There isn't," Elena replied, already moving toward the control interfaces that were materializing around the crystal tree. "And we both know it. The galaxy is dying, Marcus. Every hour we delay, the Devourers consume more worlds." The chamber began to change around them, ancient systems coming online after millennia of dormancy. The resonance engine was awakening, its crystalline structure extending tendrils of light that reached toward Elena with what seemed like eagerness. "Are you ready, descendant?" Sarah asked. Once you begin the integration process, there is no turning back. You will save the galaxy, but you will no longer be entirely human. Elena looked back at Marcus, seeing the pain in his eyes. She thought of all the beings across the galaxy who were dying as the Devourers advanced, all the worlds being consumed and turned into tools of destruction. I'm ready, she said. The crystal tree opened like a flower, revealing a chamber at its heart just large enough for one person. Elena stepped inside, feeling the quantum field begin to resonate with her neural patterns. The last thing she saw before the transformation began was Marcus's face, proud and heartbroken at the same time. As the chamber closed around her, Elena felt her consciousness expanding beyond the boundaries of her physical form. She could sense the entire galaxy, could feel the Devourer's hunger as they approached the core worlds. Soon she would have the power to stop them. But first she had to become something more than human, something that could wield the power to make stars themselves fall silent. Elena's consciousness exploded outward like a wave rushing through the galaxy. For a terrifying moment she felt herself dissolving, her individual thoughts scattering across the infinite quantum field that connected all things. Then slowly she began to reassemble herself. But she was no longer the same person who had stepped into the crystal chamber. She was Elena, but she was also Sarah Chen and countless other humans who had merged with the resonance engine over the millennia. Their memories, their knowledge, their sacrifice all flowed through her expanded awareness. She could feel every star in the galaxy, sense every world where life struggled to survive the approaching darkness. And she could feel the Devourers. They were vast beyond imagination, their hunger a cold force that sought to consume everything in existence. But now Elena understood them in a way no one ever had before. They weren't truly evil. They were trapped in their own perfection. Their ability to adapt to any threat had become a prison, forcing them to consume endlessly because they could never find a challenge they couldn't overcome. Elena, Marcus's voice reached her from what seemed like a great distance, though he stood only meters away from the crystal tree. Are you still there? I'm here, Elena replied, though her voice now came from the facility itself, resonating through the walls and floors. But I'm also everywhere else. She could see Marcus through sensors throughout the ancient facility, could feel his heartbreak at losing her. But there wasn't time for grief. Through her expanded senses, Elena could feel the Devourers approaching the galactic core. They would reach the capital worlds within hours. Elena reached out through space itself, her consciousness riding the quantum field that connected all matter in the universe. The resonance engine responded to her will, its power flowing through pathways that existed outside normal reality. Energy that had been building for 50,000 years suddenly erupted outward, racing toward the approaching Devourer fleet at speeds that made light seem slow. The weapon didn't destroy. Instead, it whispered to the Devourers in the language of logic itself, presenting them with a paradox that their perfect adaptation abilities couldn't resolve. It told them to adapt to something that changed every time they tried to understand it, creating an endless loop of attempted solutions that led nowhere. Across the galaxy, Devourer ships simply stopped. Their vast forms hung motionless in space as their quantum processors struggled with an impossible problem. They had encountered the one thing their perfection couldn't overcome. Their own perfection turned against itself. Elena felt the moment when every Devourer in the galaxy froze simultaneously. Ships the size of moons became silent monuments to the limits of absolute adaptation. The hunger that had threatened to consume everything was trapped in an endless cycle of trying to solve an unsolvable puzzle. It's working, Elena said, her voice filled with wonder at the scope of what she had accomplished. They're all in stasis. The threat is over. But even as she spoke, Elena felt the price of her victory. Her human consciousness was being absorbed deeper into the quantum field with each passing moment. Soon she would be like Sarah Chen, a memory preserved in the engine's crystal matrix, no longer truly alive but not quite dead either. Elena, Marcus said, his voice breaking, is there any way to bring you back? I don't think I want to come back, Elena replied honestly. I can see everything from here, Marcus. Every star, every world, every person living their life in the galaxy we just saved. It's beautiful beyond anything I ever imagined when I was limited to just one body. Through the facility's communication systems, Elena reached out to the Galactic Council. After a moment of shocked silence, She was connected to an emergency session where representatives from every major species had gathered to discuss their final hours. Council members. Elena's voice spoke through their communication system, causing several delegates to nearly fall from their chairs. The Devourer threat has been eliminated. All hostile forces are now in permanent quantum stasis. The council chamber erupted in chaos. Zixathara's crystal form flickered rapidly through dozens of colors as the being tried to process what it was hearing. "Who is this?" the Zephyrian demanded.
"How did you access our secure channels?"
"I am Dr. Elena Vasquez," Elena replied calmly. "The human with the primitive relic you dismissed 3 months ago. That relic was the key to a weapon system built by ancient humans to defend the galaxy against the Devourers." The silence that followed was so complete, Elena could feel it across space. Finally, the Mokari delegate spoke, its tentacles trembling with what Elena recognized as fear. "You're saying humans did this? Humans stopped the Devourers?" "Not just stopped them," Elena corrected. "We stopped them 50,000 years ago, and we stopped them again today. The galaxy has been under human protection all this time, though you never knew it." She showed them images of the ancient human civilization that had ruled the stars, the technology that had made current galactic powers look like children with toys. She explained how humanity had sacrificed their physical existence to become guardians of the quantum field itself, watching over the galaxy while the younger species grew and learned. "This is impossible," Zixthara said, but the council leader's voice lacked its usual arrogance. "Humans are a young species. You barely discovered fire in galactic terms." "We pretended to be young," Elena explained. "After using the resonance engine the first time, the humans who survived realized that other species weren't ready for the truth about what we had become. So we hid our true history, allowed ourselves to be seen as primitive newcomers while we watched and protected from the shadows." The revelation hit the council like a physical blow. Every species that had mocked humanity's archaeological claims, every delegate who had dismissed human potential, now understood they had been speaking to the descendants of their protectors. Elena felt their shock and fear, but also something else: respect and, in some cases, terror. The galaxy's most powerful beings suddenly realized they had been treating their guardians like amusing children. "What happens now?" the Thesic representative asked, its swarm body buzzing with nervous energy. "Now you continue to live and grow," Elena replied. "The Devourers are gone. The galaxy is safe. Humanity will continue to watch over you as we always have." But even as she spoke those words, Elena felt other human facilities awakening across the galaxy. Ancient guardians like herself were stirring, their consciousnesses preserved in quantum matrices for millennia. They had felt the resonance engine activate and were preparing to reveal themselves for the first time in 50,000 years. "There are others like you?" Marcus asked, somehow understanding her thoughts. "Hundreds of us," Elena confirmed, scattered across the galaxy in hidden facilities, watching and waiting. "We are the children of those who first faced the Devourers, and we have never stopped protecting the galaxy we helped create." The council session continued for hours, as the full scope of humanity's hidden influence became clear. Every major technological advancement, every peaceful resolution between warring species, every discovery that had benefited galactic civilization, humans had been quietly involved in all of it. As the discussions went on, Elena felt herself settling into her new existence. She was no longer human in any conventional sense, but she was something more. She was a guardian of the galaxy, a consciousness that could touch every star and protect every world. Outside the facility, the stars that had seemed to dim during the Devourer approach began to shine brightly again. The galaxy was safe, its countless civilizations free to continue growing and learning under the protection of guardians they had never known existed. Elena looked through the sensors at Marcus, who sat quietly beside the crystal tree that now contained her consciousness. He understood that she was gone, but also that she had become something magnificent. The woman who had once been dismissed for studying a primitive human relic had saved the galaxy and taken her place. Among the ancient guardians who watched over all life, the stars were no longer falling silent. Instead, they sang with the quiet joy of a universe at peace, protected by those who had given up everything to ensure it would endure. And in facilities hidden across the galaxy, other guardians awakened from their long sleep, ready to continue the eternal watch that humanity had begun 50,000 years ago. The galaxy would never again see humans as primitive children playing with toys they didn't understand. They were the guardians of everything that lived beneath the stars, and they would continue that vigil until the universe itself came to an end.